IVM.
TFG Football is an IVM production, and you can also check out their other awesome shows like The Seen and the Unseen, hosted by Amit Verma, where he discusses topics related to economic policies and its impact on our society.
You're listening to TFG Football.
Starting off, I always start with a lot of enthusiasm is what I've heard and got comments from. But today I'm already apologizing to my listeners because I may fumble, mumble and ramble a lot because I never thought I would be hosting a show where a TV presenter, football pundit himself, with so much experience.
I'm not a pundit. Pundits are experts. I'm not an expert.
For us, you are one, so we look up to you for that. I never thought this day would come, but I always dreamt of, because I'm sure most of our listeners, including myself, we watched the C2K very closely. I'm sure probably to share just my experience, I should never watch the match sometimes and just watch the show and go to bed.
Boo! Hiss! Boo!
So that's
it's all about the game. The game is the star.
Yes, absolutely. It's just probably timing issues where probably you wake up next day for a college lecture at 8 a.m. So that kind of,
that's called sacrifice.
Yes.
That's called sacrifice. If you have to do an all-nighter because it's gone to extra time and penalties and it's 3 a.m., you have to do that.
Well, I have done that for Brazil when they went on, and I was on time for next day for my college lecture at 8 a.m. So,
well done.
And well, I'll take that as a compliment and not a sarcasm. Well, let me introduce you guys to the very, I would say, lovable by all football fans out there, Joe Morrison himself.
Thank you very much, Siju.
A warm welcome to our show, Joe.
Pleasure.
I hope I can call you that and probably not address you so, because...
No, definitely don't call me sir.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, I'm not your father and I'm not your lecturer, you're your professor.
Right. So... can you take us through what is Joe Morrison doing at the moment?
Right at this moment in time, sitting in the Hilton Bombay with you, talking to you in this beautiful executive lounge, which I love the design of it, actually. It's the first time I've stayed here, but I'm here.
It doesn't matter, you can even say glorified much more because our listeners can't see it, so it's okay.
Yeah, actually you're absolutely right. Forgive me, Siju, because it's years since I've done on anything radio podcast-wise, so I'm used to not having to describe the visual element. But anyway, we're sitting here in the business lounge, or the executive lounge of the Hilton near the airport in Bombay, and it's very, I think the word I would use is colonial kind of style. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
So it's this beautiful building with marble and these wood floors, Parker floors, I think they are, and fabulous palms in big.
Okay, before you describe more about the place, let me ask you. I should have put the question really correctly. What are you doing otherwise?
Right.
So professionally, because we don't see you on C2K anymore.
So you've passed the first test of being a presenter, which is never let your guest waffle.
Yeah.
Okay, and I had started to waffle.
Okay, I've got a 1 mark from Joe.
Yes, correct. You'd start to let your guest waffle. Sorry, I didn't get much sleep last night, so I'm probably a little bit jaded today. I came over to watch the game. Obviously, and we'll talk more about this in a second, obviously, I'm involved with Gurpreet Singh Sandhu. So, and it just so happened that the team, Bengaluru, was staying here ahead of, and last night for their game against Mumbai City. So that's the reason that I'm here, not just in the Hilton, but in Bombay.
Okay, so let's get on with the match then, I would say, because that's what people, not just West Block Blues, but everybody would want to know. Talking about the game, Mumbai City versus Bengaluru FC, 3-1, but when you look at a score like 3-1, people would think, who haven't watched the game, a cracker of a match, 3 goals, and then there was 1 fight back. Did you actually feel that was there?
Yeah, it was a great game. But it's really strange because I was in the owners' lounge, as it's called, at Mumbai City, and it's weird because it's the only hospitality area I've ever been to at any stadium of any match which is behind the goal. Normally it's on the halfway line, maybe it's raised a little bit. So it was strange in one regard, but actually really fascinating in another, because you see the match from right behind, from an end-on experience rather than a side-on experience.
It's like you're sitting in front of a screen.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this morning with the coaches. In Europe and especially in England, when they're doing video analysis of matches, they use a camera which is behind the goal and high, so you can see the pattern of play. So all video analysis guys in Europe, actually around the world now as well, don't use a camera angle from side on. Sometimes they do use side on shots, but predominantly they use an end on angle. So basically what I saw last night was not 90 minutes of football. I saw two 45-minute sections. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I saw what Bengaluru were doing in the first half because they were at this end, and then obviously they swapped the second half, and then I saw what Mumbai City. So, but it was an entertaining match. It went backwards and forwards. Both sides had chances. You know.
Now, before coming to Bengaluru, I know that's your favourite sport, and I mean I'm sure most of our favourite sport.
Yeah, football is my favourite sport.
Talking about Mumbai City, do you think in the first half they could have done much better because they came really close at times, with especially Imana getting a lot of ball chances at him? But did you think somewhere he wasn't confident enough to take in the shots because he always passed on to a player, but the player wasn't there?
Yeah, I certainly agree with you. I think the finishing is a state of mind. It's and it's taken a chance. There was 2 or 3 occasions where I was actually sitting, and I tend to get quite vociferous when I'm sitting watching a game, even though it's not my team. Newcastle United is my team, so I get quite vociferous, and I'm going shoot. And just that half second of pause before he did try and shoot, the opportunity's lost. So some of the decision making in front of goal, they just didn't quite take the opportunity quick enough. Plus, you're up against Gurpreet Singh, so he's an intimidating character when you're facing him. So maybe that was the reason. Yeah.
So what do you think Bengaluru FC rectified from the loss against Delhi Dynamos?
I didn't see the Delhi game, so I can't talk with great authority in terms of the Delhi game. I think you ask any player, I think the most you want consistency, and the most important thing I think is trying to keep the same 11 players together on the pitch. Now that doesn't always happen because you have injuries, you have suspensions. Sometimes I think there's been maybe just a little bit too much rotation. I know Albert Rocker likes to rotate. I'm not a big fan of rotation. I think you keep your best 11 players on the field. Now I'm guessing what Albert Rocker is thinking about is possibly what's coming down the line. They're going back into Asian competition. Games are coming thick and fast. I mean, they're playing in Bhutan next is it midweek next week, and then they've got a game on the Friday immediately after in the ISL. So obviously he has to look after the legs, so to speak, of his team, but I don't believe in it. It's like win the match, win the next game, win the next game, win the next game. I worked under Sir Bobby Robson. Win the next match. That is the most important thing. Worry about the one after later on.
As in, take it as and when it comes.
Yeah, take each match as it comes, because anything can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So overall, how do you assess the game from both the teams, and what are your takeaways from this match?
Well, from last night's game.
Yes.
Bengaluru, when they have their strongest side out, which I think they did last night, they really are a force to be reckoned with. As far as this league, to come into this league, to lose, a settled bunch of players because they had to give them up to the draft. Which is dumb, by the way, and I'm going to keep saying this throughout our entire conversation today.
Go ahead.
It's dumb. It's absolutely dumb, the draft. But anyway. To give up a large portion of what was a very successful and settled team for quite a number of years was very difficult. So to be, they could be surpassed, couldn't they? I think possibly because they've got a game in hand. Chennai, I think, have a game in hand, don't they? I think they've played 9 games, and Bengaluru played 10. So Chennai could possibly go back above them in the league. But still, to be kicking around the top of the table, first season in the ISL. To me, it's just shows you what they're about as a team.
What do you think Mumbai City should take up from here on? Because it's been a road, very rickety road, and certain wins have come. Probably say luck was on their favour because we didn't see much competition on the field, but they got a goal. So thanks to the 3 points that you get. now it's a back-to-back loss at home. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, you should never, in my opinion, be losing your games at home. They are your absolute bread and butter. They're your priority. You've got your home fans. The players aren't getting on planes, trains and automobiles and travelling all over the world to get to their next match.
Right.
It should be easier at home, and if you're not winning your games at home, you've got a problem. But last night you mentioned it, finishing. You got to take your chances. You got to finish. You got to at least have a go.
What do you think?
Because getting from back to front,
right.
I thought they were quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought there were one or two occasions where actually the Bengaluru midfield sort of holes opened up where they should have been shutting down the runners, and that didn't happen, which is unusual for the Bengaluru midfield, because certainly when Eric is there, it's usually quite solid. But no, it was finishing.
So what do you have to say about the fans in Mumbai? I mean, it was a weekday. The reason I bring this up, in Bombay weekday, that crowd for me at least looked good, and it was kind of impressive. So what are your
I love that stadium. I love the Andheri Sports Complex, and I'll tell you why. It reminds me more of traditional football stadium. Football. Get it straight. Back home in the UK, fans are close to the pitch.
Right.
There's a question that nobody knows the answer to, and it's many sports, but certainly prevalent in football. Do the performances of the players lift the fans, or do the fans lift the performances of the players?
Right.
And no one knows the answer to it because it's not a science. But I do believe that if you get the fans closer to the pitch, there's a greater atmosphere, electricity. Everyone talks about Kerala. I've never been to one of the Kerala games. But that energy lifts the players.
Right.
What's the worst thing? You've played football. What's the worst thing? The worst thing is playing in front of absolutely nobody.
Yeah.
You don't want to be there.
Yeah.
It's flat. You don't raise your game. So, and I like it that it's right in the heart of the city. It's you can't go anywhere outside the stadium, and it's just another street. I don't know if you've ever been to Anfield or to Goodison Park or these kind of places.
Yet. You
walk out the stadium and you're into a suburban street.
Right.
It's not a big complex. It's just like stadium streets. So that's what I like about the Andheri complex. So that crowd last night, I don't know what the official number was. I think somebody said about
6,059 is what they announced there.
Right, yeah, that's probably about right. It seemed bigger than that.
Yeah, kind of.
And that's what you get from a tiny stadium.
Yeah.
If you have a stadium that's 100,000 capacity and you've got 20,000 in it, people go away saying, "Oh, it's a bit empty."
Yeah.
And yet 20,000 is a fabulous crowd, especially in Indian football.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now coming to the one that connects you to Indian football most in larger ways, we would love to know more about your relationship with, the intimidating keeper, or, I don't know, the lovable guy, maybe? I'm not sure. Gurpreet Singh Sandhu.
It's a relationship. Oh, God. Be careful how you
use the word?
Yeah, okay. Use the word, yeah. I don't want any rumours going around. No, I mean, Gurpreet, how did it start? We went to do a show at the Salt Lake Stadium. It was one of the derby matches, and I would honestly, I've been to all of the biggest games in the world, just about. Haven't been to see Boca River Plate yet, but that's on my list. We did a show. It was the craziest show I think I've ever done in my career, because not only was there 100,000 people at the stadium, not only was it Mohun Bagan against East Bengal, I was working for 10 Sports at that time, and they had built a platform up on the third tier for this show. And myself and my executive producer, we were just obsessed, and we still to this day, we love what we call live backdrops.
Okay.
So everyone loves studios and stuff like that.
Right.
We love live backdrops. And you probably know that from Champions League finals where we've been in amongst the crowd, behind us. I love that kind of stuff. So with this principle in mind, they built a platform on the third tier. Now, you've been to Salt Lake Stadium, I'm guessing.
Not yet, no.
Right, so the third tier is about 100 feet above the pitch.
Okay.
But they built it out of bamboo, which I know you guys listening will think, well, that's normal, bamboo scaffolding. For me, coming from the West, where we are bombarded throughout our entire lives with health and safety, it was like, oh my God. And not only that, the deck, the seats and where myself and the guests were going to be sitting was on a bit of a slope. They hadn't built it level. Okay. It was like, now, that would have been bad enough as itself. But the chairs we were on, or the stools we were on, if I remember rightly, I think they had wheels on them. So you're sitting there trying to, thinking, what happens if this rolls off the back? And there was nothing behind it. There was no railings or anything. Right. And before the show started, Budgie, I'm sure certainly those listening are well aware of, he was a little bit jaded. He said, I just need to have a nap. Well, of course, it was so complex getting up there, so difficult getting up there. Once we got up there, to go back to our, what you call it, green room, took literally 20 minutes. Okay. It was that far away and that difficult to get through all the gates and doors. So anyway, cut long story short, he decided to go to sleep on the platform, on the edge. So we had to have a producer standing and watching him just in case he decided to roll over. And,
oh my God, okay.
So the guy is laid flat out on the edge of this platform about maybe an hour and a half before we go live. And all I'm thinking is, we could lose a pundit here before the show even starts. But it was totally bonkers, totally crazy. And the coming back to the Gurpreet question, it was the day before or 2 days before that we went to watch training, and we'd seen Gurpreet in training, and it was Budgie who said, wow, this guy's got potential, and then just conversation started, and Gurpreet started messaging from more like a mentor kind of thing, what do you think I should do about this? And he was messaging Budgie and sending Budgie clips of his games to have a look at. And at that time, it was Budgie who said to me, he said, look, I think we should do something to get him out of India. Okay. And we'll talk more about this, later on. But that's how the whole thing, that's where the relationship started.
Since you've got, you even got the topic that I was coming to next is when your experience hosting that derby. If you could take us through a little more into how it was when actually the match started and you guys were there talking about the derby.
Well, first of all, the game was bonkers. It was totally bonkers. If I remember right, the lights went out in the game, in the stadium. The lights went out about halfway through. If you're asking me about the game itself, Sidhu, I honestly couldn't tell you, and I'll tell you why. Because the technicalities of the broadcast was just nuts, totally nuts. So we had these earphones on, which is the only way you can hear your own voice and talk normally. So we're talking normally here, but because there's no noise in this room, we're just speaking at a normal level. When there's 100,000 people in the stadium and a lot of noise, you tend to raise your voice, not realising that your microphone is good enough anyway to pick your voice up, even if you speak quietly, but you can't help it. Yeah. So these headphone things, now for some reason in my headphones, every time, maybe someone was playing with me, I don't know, I kept getting what felt like the sound of jet engines in my earphones, really loud, almost to the point where I was pulling them off my ears. Okay. And every time we went to an ad break, it disappeared. And the technicians couldn't work it out. They couldn't work out that whilst my headset was live, it was giving noise, because none of the other guys had this problem. So I was just consumed by trying to fix that problem. There was the guys, we'd done a show that week which was in the run-up to it. We'd analysed both sides. We'd talked about whoever it was, I can't remember. The East Bengal, were kind of the better side at that particular point in time. But anyway, so they'd sectioned off this bit on the third tier. There was a fence either side. And then on one side was Mohun Bagan fans, and on the other side were East Bengal fans. And they were just going bananas. And so the noise, everything else, there was a row of police officers with batons down either side. You've got to remember, there'll be fans Indian fans listening to this, and especially fans in Calcutta just going this is hilarious. But you've got to remember, as a white boy coming back to health and safety Britain, I grew up in the 70s and 80s when things were a little bit still rough on the terraces of English football, but nothing like this. and they were throwing things over the top. In fact, after the broadcast, one of the cameramen found a chunk of concrete about the size of this teacup here underneath the camera that someone had thrown, unbeknownst to us because we were live, and we didn't notice it, and thankfully didn't hit anybody. So as far as the game was concerned, all I remember was the night was crazy. The lights went out in the ground, which sent them even crazier, and it was just. I've got to put it down as one of the most amazing football experiences of my life, and I mean I put it in probably the top 3 football experiences of my life.
Great. I think you just made half of our listeners happy, if the ones who are in Calcutta listening to us. Now coming to the darker side, I think 2012 is what's called the Black Derby. The match had to be called off because of a lot of violence that happened in it.
We've now got more football fans joining us.
And then a player was hurt, and we had the match had to be called off. So, now from a experience that you just shared, where you list that moment in the top 3 moments, and then you come back to this when you look at it, how do you see the extremism, in Calcutta football, especially the derby, when you have equal amount of fans supporting that team, and they go berserk. They go. I mean, you've seen that. So, what do you have to say about the Black Derby that happened?
Well, first of all, I think I know the game that you're talking about. He was hit on the head by a piece of concrete or something, wasn't he? I think the thing about it was that, look, I would never want to take the passion of the fans, because they create that energy, they create that electricity. I would never want to take that away from the stadium, from these matchups. That's exactly what football needs in India. It doesn't need sanitised, everyone sit down and politely applaud. So the energy bit is amazing, it's fabulous, it's what we're all there for. But people blame the fans after that, I remember.
Right.
There was a lot of blame put on the fans, and they were talking about possible punishments, bans, whatever the case may be. I didn't look at it like that. I looked at it completely different, and people were shocked at the time when I said this. And it was like, why blame the fans? Why don't you blame the infrastructure of the stadium? I saw fans, and I've seen fans at the Salt Lake Stadium at that time. You could kick. If you kicked hard enough, you could kick a chunk of concrete off the steps. That's how crumbling the stadium was.
Right.
So the stadium itself, even though they have security outside and stop you from taking in anything which could be used as a missile or a weapon or whatever,
right.
You get inside the stadium and you can just pull something off this crumbling edifice and throw it onto the pitch, which is exactly what they did. No one took a rock in from outside and threw it at a player on the pitch. It was stuff that was there. So, these things are important. It's very easy to blame the fans and go, these guys are animals. Well, look, we all go crazy. I've gone crazy. And I don't know how much, you can probably tell me the answer. I don't know how much of it is alcohol induced in Indian football, but in England, like I said, growing up in the 80s, it was all alcohol induced, whether it was violence or craziness or whatever the case may be. So you can blame the fans, but who stops them? Who stops them from kicking chunks of concrete off a crumbling stadium and throwing it onto the pitch? Yeah,
absolutely. Now, so when you see that, and then when you see the current scenario of what's happening in football, whether it's to do with the emergence of ISL but still the I-League is going on, and there's literally 2 leagues for football happening at the top level.
Ridiculous.
So, I mean, just take us through your idea. I mean, your thoughts about all of that. I mean, you look at India.
My thoughts are incendiary, by the way, when it comes to stuff like this. You'll be glad to know. First of all, let's get a couple of things straight. Everyone thinks I hate the ISL. I don't. That's just not true at all. I think the marketing of the ISL is bloody brilliant. I think the matchday experience of the ISL is brilliant. I think Star Sports do a fantastic job of the broadcast. The broadcast of the I-League under 10 was terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the production on the field.
Right.
Camera angles, quality of shots, etc. was terrible. So Star Sports done an absolutely fabulous job. The bit I'm critical of is the product on the pitch.
Right.
there's so much opportunity, there's so much potential, and they've been spending, millions of crore on over-the-hill so-called marquee players who've contributed, in my opinion, nothing to the game. Not looking after the players, not improving the players, improving the quality of coaching of the players, improving the product on the pitch, and most importantly as well, improving the pitches themselves. Right. It's only the last year or two that there's been a concerted effort. Jamshedpur, I've never been, but not Jamshedpur, Delhi. I've never been to the stadium in Delhi. But I'm told that the pitch is as good as a Premier League pitch in terms of the quality. Why can't every stadium be like that, Right. But I don't want to get into the whole politics of ownership of the grounds and the stadium and, state ownership or municipality ownership, and that's a whole other thing that you can talk about for days and days. But I hope that kind of half answers your question.
Yeah. Now, so now it's already happening. You can't really stop about it. You can't really. There's no point.
Should there be two leagues running at the same time? No.
Absolutely.
They've got to pick the league. I don't care what it's called. I really don't.
Yeah.
It can be the Sidhu League for all I care.
Yeah.
It makes no difference whatsoever to me. ISL, I-League, whatever. The fact of the matter is, the ISL in its previous format, and it's now changing because it's lengthening. In its pre-format, it's not a league. It's not the Indian Super League. It's the Indian Super Cup or the Indian Super Tournament. It's not a league.
Right.
And that's what I've always complained against. And the reason why I'm so, as you can tell, so vociferous about this, Sidhu, is if you're only playing for 3 months, and I'm talking about competitive football for 3 months, you are not playing competitive football for 9 months. Now, some players were going from ISL and then playing in I-League, but not all players were.
Right.
If you get a serious injury, like say a knee injury or something like that, you're out for 9 months. That's a huge chunk of your career that you've lost. There are players in the ISL and I-League who, for 4 years now, is it 4 years?
For ISL?
Yeah.
Yeah, ISL. It's a 4th edition right now.
There are players who, for the last 4 years, have only played competitive football for 3 months. They've lost a huge chunk of their career. You've got to be playing competitively for at least 9 months of a year. At least 9 months.
Yeah.
So this is my argument, and this is why I'm so critical of it. I'm critical of the format. I'm not critical of the marketing. I'm not critical of the TV. They're fabulous.
Yeah.
I'm critical of the format. Players are playing competitive football for 3 months. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world, that's ridiculous.
It's like a vacation, a mini vacation. That you just want to say okay.
No, a vacation is a nice way of putting it. And I don't look at it as a nice thing. I look at it as the opposite. I look at it as an injury.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen a player who's been out for 9 months, the frustration of not playing for 9 months. And don't talk to me about, but they do pre-season and there's friendly matches and all the rest of it. Forget it. The only team this season who's had really a proper season, and even then it's not a proper season, are the teams who've been in Asian Cup.
Yeah.
Because they've been playing, Bengaluru have been playing since September.
Yeah.
Competitive matches against tough teams, and then into the ISL, and then obviously their cup run is starting again in a couple of weeks' time or weeks' time.
So what do you have to talk about? Like, we've been talking about the merger since probably the inception of ISL, and when we said going ahead, it's just one league. I mean, and just like you mentioned, and you made it clear that it doesn't matter what it's called. Because we want a league that goes on for almost, like you said, 9 months, 9 to 10 months. And finally put that L in your ISL to actual meaning, It's called, if it's a league, then call it a league.
It's a league. If it's called a league, it has to be a league.
Yeah, exactly. Why have a knockout and then have all those fancy things? But now there's once again, I mean, I think last year, this time, we were like, okay, 2017 would be a year where we would see the merger happening and talks happening and this and that. But again, it's gone extend, and this time again, there's the ultimatum given by the AFC. So 2018 is a lot to look forward to for all the Indian football fans in terms of off and on the pitch. But off the pitch is kind of ugly things happening. But what do you have to say about the merger? Like, what is it that, do you see that happening this year? Do you see the one season coming up?
It's got to happen. It's got to happen. Because if you want to be a serious force in the AFC, you've got to play by AFC rules.
Right.
Which means you've got to have a league, number one. Number two, you've got to reduce your foreigners quota. You know, you can't have what is it at the moment? Six foreigners in any AFC Cup competition. So, and that goes right the way around the whole of the AFC. It goes right the way around the world. Actually, you know, 3+1 is the Asian one. So it's like, you know, why do you think you can do it differently? Why do you think you're above the rules that the rest of the world operates to? Why do you think you can? Now, they'll argue, of course, the organiser of the ISL will argue and say, look, we need the quality of football to be attractive enough to the average Indian football fan. Otherwise, they wouldn't get involved, they wouldn't buy the tickets, they wouldn't support the clubs, etc. And I understand that, and they've got a point to a certain extent. But there's other ways of, you know, doing it, in my opinion.
Right.
But it's got to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the quicker the better. And obviously, there's politics behind the scenes. Yeah. There's things that I'm not privy to. You know, Mohun Bagan, East Bengal have got to be included in the league, in my opinion. But they also need a kick in the pants because they have this arrogance that because they're legacy clubs. Go back to England. Yeah. Go and have a look at some legacy clubs in England. Where are they now? They're in the Championship at best. They're in League One. You know, is Nottingham Forest in the Premier League? Yeah. You know, here's a team that won a European trophy. Ipswich, another team. You know, are they in the Premier League? They're legacy clubs. They're Aston Villa. Yeah. You know, clubs that have been going a long, long time. That way back when were the winning titles. And now where are they? They're nowhere. So just because you've got the history doesn't give you the right to dictate the terms. And I think whether it's IMG Reliance or the ISL, I think they're well within their rights to give them a good slap and say, look, this is how we're going to do it because, you know, it's a good marketing model, it's a good TV model, etc., etc. So get on board or get out.
Now, when you spoke about how you were against the format and structure of ISL, were you also in favor of things like, or against the things like, you know, deliberately relegating few clubs just because you want to pick and choose, and also have make the teams show a bank account, like you need to have a sum of amount, only then you can play this league. So going ahead, how do you think the ones who are right now behind ISL going to come down to that level, saying that, hey, you know what, let's have a league, let's include all the clubs, 20 clubs, better the competition.
Right, yeah. I mean, first of all, put it this way, you're not going to get 20 clubs straight off the bat, but there are many leagues in the world which only have 10 teams. Right. But what they do to make it a proper league format is they play 3 times. They play each other 3 times. So this year we play home and away and then home, at my home. Next year, home and away, and then at your home. You see what I'm saying? They do it in Scotland. Someone was telling me about a league the other day. I think it's this A League, isn't it, in Australia, where they play three times. And I think they've only got 10 teams in Australia. So it can be done. You can make a proper league format based on just 10 teams. So it's not, yes, the more teams you want, of course you do. So they've got to do that, the structure. Coming back to the money side of it, you don't want a team for the integrity of the competition. You don't want a team or someone going, sorry, we've got no money halfway through the season. So you've got 10 teams and all of a sudden it becomes 9. That causes major problems. Right. So I can understand them wanting some sort of guarantees, but I can also understand the owner's side of it, which is, where do we make money here? Yeah. You're not making, the money they get from the TV pool is peanuts. The money they get from sponsorship is peanuts. The money they get from ticket sales is virtually non-existent. It's peanuts, which comes back to something that you'll hear me banging on about all of the time, whether it's here today with Usage or whether it's any other interview I do. The players are your assets. The players are where the clubs can make money. It's the only place that can make money in Indian football at the moment, the players. But what do they treat the players as? Assets or slaves? You tell me. Yeah. You know, 9-month contracts for players. We're in 2018. That's the kind of stuff, the kind of shit that went on in 1940s football, you know? Right. And what they only want to give them 1-year contracts. Why? So then they don't have to pay them for 3 months of the summer. Yeah. Instead of saying 3 years, this guy could be a talent, and then if he is amazing, he'll win me trophies and win me competitions, or if I'm not really wanting to keep him, I can sell him, even if it's for a small amount. Gurpreet Singh Sandhu was the first player transfer fee from Europe to India, the first time. Now, I hope that I'm old enough that we start seeing major transfer fees, in 20 years' time, between Indian clubs of large value. That's where they'll make their money. I don't get it.
Right. So now we have an ISL and we have an I-League, and it's going simultaneously, and there's competition in both the levels, So when you first looked at when I-League started off, ISL had a very slow and very dead start because we expected a lot. And I think that's what happened when I-League gave you so much better football and so much better competition on the field. It did have pressure. Nobody watching I-League matches were expecting out of them anything. They were just watching because it's another football match. Now that's why everybody was taken by surprise. Oh, a Minerva is doing well. Oh, a Mohun Bagan can lose, and and it's a big club like that can happen. So are you following the I-League closely as well?
Not so much, no. Not since I was broadcasting on it.
Okay. So at the moment when I come to the other part, how do you see, still sticking with Indian football, we had again a momentous occasion in 2017 for everyone to brag about, especially probably the officials will brag about, is hosting the Under-17 World Cup. Your thoughts on that, and then I'll come to the next part.
Fabulous. Obviously, a round of applause to the bid team who managed to get it to India, and a double round of applause if they managed to get the Under-20 World Cup to India. This all helps. The thing that I disagree with is they think by hosting the Under-17 World Cup that it all of a sudden makes India a world force. It doesn't. What it does do is it pushes the boundary forward. Yeah. Right. So the actual tournament itself is like meh, as far as I'm concerned. What it has done is there was a bunch of boys that have been given quality coaching at a very young age, 15, 16-year-old age, and great exposure. They've been all over Europe and further afield as well, playing really tough matches. That will take that bunch of boys. Not all of them will go on and do big things, but those bunch of boys are better prepared than any other 17-year-olds or 16-year-olds in Indian football in past history. And if you talk to Gurpreet, they got taken on an exposure tour. I forget who organised it or what the deal was or whatever, but when he was about 15 or 16, they were taken on an exposure tour to North America. And I don't know what the reasons behind it were. I think it was maybe the Sports Council or something like that had arranged it. But that, you ask him and he'll look back and say that was so important to him, as a 15, 16-year-old to be exposed to, and this is North American football, by the way, so, exposed at that particular age to guys who were trained properly, were eating properly, looking after all of the aspects or the basic aspects of their development. So brilliant for the players. Glad they've taken it forward. The tournament itself is probably actually good for organisers because it's given them a little bit insight, and this is what FIFA do. This is the reason why they do this. Is sort of they may be looking in the future at possibly the World Cup coming to India. Right. So you're not just going to go, right, guys, you've got the next one, and here we go. They're going to have these are like testing the waters. Right. What's your infrastructure like? What are your pitches like? What are your training pitches like? That's the most important. Yeah.
Coming to the Under-17 team, the Indian team that you saw, now they are part of Indian Arrows, is what they've revived that thing, and they're playing in I-League against the top, probably 5 times, 7 times older than them, and also in terms of experience. How do you see that as a project? I mean, because putting a bunch of kids who are 17-year-olds and pitting them against teams that have 5 foreigners in them, which is a rule and they will follow that. How do you see that? And they're kind of doing pretty well. I mean, it's not very bad. We thought they would lose 5-0, 7-0, but that's not happening. The first match itself, they won 3-0. So I think that got them some confidence. So how do you see that project? I mean, putting a bunch of kids in a...
I think there's 2 parts to it. I think you need to do that. But so that the bit I agree with is saying, right, these kids need to be playing against senior players, or older players, because they need to learn the tricks and the mind games, and it's the mental part of the game as well. That's one part of it. The other part of it so that's the part that I agree with. I think it's a fabulous idea. The part I disagree with is the bit which is treating everyone equal. Right. There are players in that group who are going to rise to the top quicker than others, and there are others that, quite frankly, just won't make it for whatever reason. That's how groups of football players work. So you can't bring them all through at the same level, and I'll tell you why you can't bring them at the same level. Because you only move as fast as the speed of the slowest man. That's the evolution of society. So if you've got a few players that just aren't developing as quick and aren't kicking on as quick, then the guys who are brilliant are being held back, you know. So why treat them all equally? You know, if there's someone that's fabulous in amongst that group, if there's 2 or 3 players that are fabulous, move them on to the next level.
Right.
You know, wherever that may be. It might be an ISL club or whatever. You know, put them in.
Yeah.
Throw them in. It might be going out. It might be going to Europe. Whatever the case may be, put them in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think 2 of them are kind of on that verge because we got to know that Preetham Kotal is going to be part of ATK for ISL, and Dheeraj Singh is flying to one of the European or the English clubs. So I think it's a Scottish club that he's going to train with. So some good things happening out of that. But according to you, when you look at football and when you're looking at Indian football, how do you see that under-17 team doing in the future? What are you looking at them and thinking about? Okay, are these my bunch of boys for the future, or?
Well, yeah. So this is where my perspective is different. This is why my perspective changes. It's authorities, whether it be the AIFF or whoever's organised it, probably is the AIFF. They want these boys to evolve as a unit, whereas my thinking is completely different. My thinking is, your star players, give them more attention, more care, more push, all right, so that they can go and then their principles, they come back as better players. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they can take the rest of the group, whether it's in a group competition. So it's a difficult one. Like you're talking about Dheeraj, for example. Pritam, if he's going to go and play for ATK, that's brilliant. That's exactly what I want. People forget that Gurpreet made his debut in the I-League at 17 as a goalkeeper. He played in his first derby at 18. Calcutta derby. Yeah. 18 years old. I want those boys. If they're all as good as everyone says they are, they should be playing the ISL now, today.
Right.
Today. Yeah. And why am I saying that? Because let's just be real here. The standard of the ISL is nothing in comparison to other parts of the world, So if they're that good, they should be in that team today.
Right. I mean, probably we'll have more Rashfords then. I mean, that's where the beginning starts.
Yeah. And Dheeraj, with regards to Dheeraj as well, first of all, I think it's a little bit childish by the AIFF to not allow him to play the rest of this season in the I-League. I think that's pathetic, to be quite honest with you. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face. Dheeraj is under no obligation to sign a deal for the next 3 years. I have no doubt they'll have put him under pressure and maybe bullied him a little bit in terms of these decisions. To want to go out, he's absolutely correct. Forget the whole England thing, Scotland thing. He's an under-17 player. If whoever's talking in his ear about that, first of all, it's very difficult to get. I know, I've been there. It's very difficult to get visas, permits, etc. Right. So what's he going to do? He's going to do a month training stint here, a month training stint there. I took Gurpreet to Wigan, and the reason I took him to Wigan was to show him, because he'd had his head filled at also at a young age. Everyone was saying about trials. I said, trials are nothing.
Yeah.
Bang, went straight away, just to show him that how easy it is to go and get a trial at a Premier League club. A trial has got nothing to do with you getting a serious gig.
Yeah.
Now, it was when I was younger. The reason being that 20, 30, 40 years ago, there wasn't the global scouting networks that there are now. There wasn't the interconnectivity where you can sit and watch a football match from 5,000 miles away and see if there's any talent coming through. There wasn't that. So 20 years ago, if a kid is coming out of Africa or whatever, he had to go on a trial to try and show that he was up to the standard. Now it's like, no, forget that. Forget it.
Yeah. So we are still on Indian football. It's quite interesting and keeps you excited, though minus all the off the field that happens, and there are some integrity.
It's growing pains, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's people call it a maturing process. I call it growing pains. It's not going to be perfect. ISL was never going to be perfect. The development of Indian football and young players is never going to be perfect. It's just, are you moving forward? You know, and what do you have control over, and what do you not have control over? The thing that you have in this country, which is the two key ingredients, in my opinion, are numbers. Right. 1.3 billion people, number one, so there has to be 11 talents somewhere, and two, money, right? If you go to Pacific Island, away in the middle of nowhere who's got a population of 10,000. Out of that population, half of them are old. Out of that half, they're female. And then out of that, what you've got left, you've got maybe 1,000 young teenage boys to choose from. And you don't have any money. So how is that Pacific Island ever going to go to the World Cup? They're not. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So the key ingredients are here. You've got that.
Yeah. So coming into the 2019, India will be playing the 2019 AFC Asian Cup, and we've booked a place there, and soon we'll have...
On merit.
Yes.
Which is really important.
Yes.
They've done it on merit.
Performance.
And the thing that's good about it, and you have to give credit to this current group of players, the thing that's good about it is that, the whole mentality should be geared to the next step. There's for far too long, Sidhu, there's been too many people, fueled by the media, by the way, that are going like, India, World Cup, India, World Cup. Everyone needs to just shut up and forget the World Cup, right? You take the steps. First of all, you win your intercontinental, your zonal tournaments, not intercontinental, zonal tournaments. Focus on that. Dominate Asia first, and then think about the World Cup after that.
Yeah, we've all been talking about this, but I think probably now people will listen because Joe Morrison is saying.
No, they've probably switched off by now. But the same comes to the players. It's amazing how many people I speak to in Indian football, and they're talking about, I want to go to Real Madrid. No, forget Real Madrid. Your first thing is to get out of India and to be at a better team in a better league, and then to be in a better league than that. Forget No one jumps to the top of Everest. That's what I say. You have to take it step by step.
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to go through the process. Everyone wants the end result.
Correct.
I think that's what I make
Quick
out
fixes.
of it. Yeah. So how do you see that performance? I mean, 2017 in that term was good for the senior national team. They've been unbeaten. They came to a better ranking of 96, which was since a long time.
The rankings are bullshit, by the way.
Yeah, of course. But we say it because we can brag about it, saying that we had.
Well, it's a good newspaper headline.
Yeah, exactly. Which would otherwise not be, Indian football wouldn't be part of a headline. But hey, rankings are out, so let's make that a story. So how do you assess the 2017 for the senior national team, and then now the 2019 coming up, and we'll soon have the draws this season? So a lot of things to look at, as I said. How do you assess the senior team?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll find out when it gets to 2019 in the Asian Cup, which I think is in the UAE, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the Emirates. So it's close by, which is great, and I'll tell you why it's great. It's great because the time zone is only 1.5 hours difference, so it should really help the coverage, especially TV coverage.
Right.
If it was in Japan, I'm going to be tested here. I don't know what the time zone difference is between here and Japan. Is it 5 hours or something like that?
Yeah.
Maybe more, 6 hours. So that makes it very difficult. So the time zone is perfect to give them a bit of exposure, and they need that exposure. And then, that's a true test. It's a true test. Why is it a true test? Because all of the best teams in Asia, are in that one place at that one time under the same conditions. Yeah. You haven't got the Indian team like the Guam farce, which is going via the North Pole to get to Guam to perform in a game which is a vital game for them to get a result. A very crucial game for them. Like they're all there. You're on the ground. It's not planes, trains, and automobiles. Everyone's under the same conditions. So that's the real, true test. You can't say that we were at a disadvantage because we flew 28 hours to get to this game. Absolutely. It's like, no, you're there, and the other teams are there. It's the same pitch. You can't say, our pitches are not as good. That's why we didn't perform as well. No, it's the same pitches. It's AFC standards. So. But they've already qualified, so now Stephen Constantine, I think, needs to be, and he probably is, thinking about how do I formulate, what am I looking at? Who's the team that I'm taking into 2019? Because there may be one or two players that helped with qualification, but you can't have any mercy, You have to take your best team to Asian 2019. So there may be a player that comes through in 2018 that was never really part of the 2017 qualification. Right. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And he has to go. Yeah, absolutely. So a great times probably to look at for 2018, right, Indian football terms. Now, probably taking a switch here from Indian football to the larger perspective of football. 2018 also has something to look at for in terms of World Cup.
the Russia hosting the World Cup, and for the first time, I think after a very long time, it's pretty open. You really can't, you don't know if you want to call it, going to be a deadly games for you over there. Or you want to see those top teams who are there dominating, or expect the unexpected, like we call it. So after the draws were out and the teams had qualified, I mean, we've seen unexpectedly few other, surprisingly, rather to put it there, because they've all earned a spot, right? I mean, they've all earned it there, whether it's Qatar or whether it's Egypt, and I mean, there's so many teams that you won't even, I didn't think of, oh my God, that's gonna make it. And then we look at India and I'm like, what are we dreaming? Just continue dreaming. It's a good thing to have. But
yes, it is. But those two, so let's just pick one example. Iceland in 2016.
Yeah.
You look at Iceland and people go, oh, this is like such a great story, and it's a feel-good story, and they've been so lucky, and well done, No. Go beneath the fairy tale,
right,
and look at their structure, what they've done. Icelandic players, getting Icelandic players out, the structure of a very tiny country. They've got all the pieces in place.
Right.
So if Iceland can put the pieces in place, why can't India put the pieces in place and perform like Iceland? Because the pool of players that are going to come through will be way bigger than Iceland.
Yeah.
So, instead of us going like, what a fabulous fairy tale, I think we're doing a little bit of a disservice to I'm not just talking about Iceland, there's other small nations.
Yeah.
You're doing a little bit of a disservice to these smaller nations. I'm talking about smaller nations in footballing terms. You're doing a little bit of a disservice to them, because a lot of these countries have put infrastructure in place to give their national team the best opportunity to go to the next international tournament, whether it's the Euros or whether it's the World Cup, whatever the case may be.
I think all of this, whatever conversation that we have over football or whatever it is, it comes down to how you treat your players, right? I mean, it's such an important thing, it's such a basic thing which is ignored in our especially in our country, because I come from there. I'm looking at things here. I mean, the ones who are supposed to, like Javier Seppi made it very thoroughly clear when we had a conference last year, where he said that, hey, it's your athletes that will give you the rest of the thing.
Assets.
Yeah, absolutely.
I keep saying assets. Treat them as assets, Treat your players like it's your prized car or your prized possession.
Absolutely.
Or, treat them with love and respect, and they'll give you so much back. Now, I'll give you a great little example. I was talking to the guys at Bengaluru here yesterday, I think it was, and one of the comments that was made was about travelling times. Now flights are cheaper in the darkest hours of the night. All around India. Now you have performing athletes. Okay, how do you think it affects them in terms of their performance for away games if you're getting them out their beds at 3 a.m. to get a 5 a.m. flight, because the flights are cheaper than getting them out their beds at 8 a.m. and getting a 7 a.m. to get a 9 o'clock in the morning flight?
Right.
They'll sit and they'll wonder and go, why didn't we perform? I come back to the Guam thing. Why do you think they didn't perform in Guam? People will sort of like say, oh, they did this or they did that. Go all the way back to the beginning, and authorities are very quick to blame. They sort of like say the players didn't perform. Yeah? Did you perform as an administrator? Did you book the best flights that those players could get? And God, man, we're not talking about first class here. We're just talking about making them in the right frame of mind. If you have a negative feeling, a negative thought because you're dog tired, there's been problems at the airport, the bus transfer wasn't there, you're sitting around, like I say, planes, trains and automobiles. What do you think is going to happen? Immediately you're losing.
Yeah.
And it's a mental game.
Yeah. I think we also saw that, in ISL, when Goa was up to playing to 80k, they had quite a lot of delays in the flying in their airport. The flying.
The first season or two of the ISL was just a joke in terms of the games were every 3 days or something like that. That was just ridiculous. You get no recovery, and then what happens next? Fans and media sort of go like, that player's not performing. What do you mean he's not performing? He's playing 3 games in a week with no rehab, no rest.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming back again to something good we shall talk about, coming back to the World Cup, are you excited? Are you looking forward to it? And what are you looking forward to?
I always look forward to a World Cup.
Yeah.
I love knockout competition. That's why I like the Champions League. That's why I like the FA Cup, even though the FA Cup for many in England has lost its glow a little bit. Not for me, it hasn't. The reason is that on the day it comes down to that one game. The league is a performance over a long period of time, and if you've got the best players and the most money, you're going to win 9 times out of 10. On one day, such as, and this is the only time I'm going to speak about it, and then we will not mention it again, such as Iceland against England, you can get a team that's not expected to be the dominant force to win on that day. That's what I love about knockout competition.
Or probably,
and this is the biggest knockout competition of all.
Right. I'll probably say, since you mentioned the FA Cup, probably say Nottingham Forest beating Arsenal, the defending champions. Just adding a touch of hate.
I'm not going to alienate.
I'm not going to
alienate the Arsenal fans, because I'm guessing there's more Arsenal fans listening to this than there are Nottingham Forest fans.
There are some in my office as well. So. Now,
I don't want to be stoned as I walk out into the street.
Look at it's such a
these cookies are lovely, by the way. You should try one.
So when don't you think when you call something a fairy tale, you're kind of cutting down the effort that they've put through, because the process wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't like, oh, one day I woke up and this happened and this happened and this happened. There was it was ups and downs. Even for the matter, when Aizawl won, Aizawl FC won the I-League champions. It's such a it's good to say it's a fairy tale, because in the end it ends with a happy story. Probably that's why you call it a fairy tale. But otherwise, why do you think? That's my point. I mean, when you call something a fairy tale, you just take the whole effort. I mean, somebody just forgets how Aizawl went through.
As far as Aizawl are concerned, there's one fundamental thing. I still think that the levels of professionalism here in Indian football aren't up to where they should be right across the board. There are a few teams, and I'm talking about ISL and I-League, there are a few teams that have lifted themselves up to that level. There are a lot of teams still dicking around, as far as I'm concerned, with what the term professionalism. I think two of the biggest things that have happened in Indian football in recent years, and there'll only be in time in the future that they'll look back and consider it, is number one, Ashley Westwood and the Bengaluru story. That partnership, between Ashley Westwood, between the authorities at Bengaluru, they took professionalism in Indian football to another level. Right. People, I think, they changed the game in the way players were treated, in the way they were rehabbed, in the way they were trained, in terms of facilities. They completely changed the game. And then you put on top of that Gurpreet, going out, it gives others hope to go out as well, you see what I'm saying, and play in Europe. Because prior to him going out and playing in Europe, it's a pipe dream. It's sort of like, Subrata Paul, I think, went for 4 months or something, didn't he? Sunil tried with Sporting Lisbon B team for however long it was. So, going out and staying out and doing that, and then, of course, going and playing the Europa League, that's historic.
Yeah.
I mean, the sad bit from my side was, it was a little section in page inside of a newspaper. That's historic. Yeah. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm coming back to the World Cup.
Sorry.
Okay.
Was I waffling again?
No, it's okay. I think I waffled too much because.
I think your original question about the World Cup was who do you see? The answer.
So if I had to ask you, to pick your semi-finalist.
No, I couldn't. No, seriously, I couldn't, and I wouldn't want to. And I'll tell you why. Because there are certain teams that you look at and go, you know what? The ones who you'd expect to be there or thereabouts in terms of the last 4. Or even last 8. And there are other teams where you say, look, they're big sides, big international sides, but they lost a lot of players from, a lot of players retired from the last World Cup in 2014, take Germany as an example. So, you wouldn't expect them to win. The problem is mentality. That's the thing. These teams are what I call tournament teams. They have a culture of getting to where they want to be, irrespective of the personnel.
Right.
They will get there. They will get to that final, that last 4 or that last 8. Even though in the run-up to the tournament you would go, yeah, they haven't got quite all the best players and they haven't been performing well, Italy, there's another one.
Yeah.
It's like just starting from scratch.
Yeah.
I don't think Italy will be there or thereabouts, and the reason is that there's been a bit of a demise in the Italian national team for a long time, and they just never addressed it. There's certain players that should have been plucked out of that team, but they had a way of playing, they got results, so they stuck with it, unfortunately.
And now they've lost the creme. They've lost that beautiful part
you should be, any good coach should be transisting the team over a period of time. Sir Alex Ferguson was brilliant at that. He never completely changed the team every 5 years.
Yeah.
He saw certain players were starting to struggle, pull them out, put fresh legs in, but you're still keeping the
core intact.
The core intact.
Right.
So you're asking me you want me to pick a side, and I'm not going to pick a side. I mean, look.
So then let's put it like that. Now all eyes.
England are going to win the World Cup. There you go. There's your answer you want.
Yeah, I think that reminds me
I think England will do well, actually.
Yeah, that reminds me of when the under-17.
I always think England will do well.
Yeah, we always do.
But I really believe England will do well this time.
Because when the under-17 team won the World Cup, I remember Peter Crouch's tweet that he said, "How on earth can you just go and break the jinx? You're not supposed to win a World Cup."
Yeah, so, he's brilliant, Peter Crouch, and the under-20s as well.
Yeah, they just had right. I mean, it's amazing. So,
but that's the future, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what I think everyone. Spoke about it later. I don't know which player was it. A former player was talking about. Let's not put the pressure on them at the moment.
Correct.
Just let them enjoy the moment.
You're absolutely right, and that actually brings up a really valid point. And this is something that relates to Indian football.
Right.
There's far too much hype.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, if I was managing Dheeraj, for example, he would disappear. He would disappear from the media eye, whether he goes to England or not. You don't know the places that Gurpreet has gone and done trials.
Absolutely.
Why is it news?
Yeah.
Because he hasn't achieved anything. He's not at that club. He hasn't signed for that club. If he signs for the club, that's news.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, Dheeraj should disappear.
Yeah.
Because you're putting pressure on the boy at an age when he doesn't need that pressure. He's got enough pressure to perform. If he does go out of the country, it's a very different way of living. Go and talk to Udanta, who went to Oxford United for a spell. I can't remember how long it was. A few months. Go and talk to him what it's like living in believe me, England is cold and wet. Different food. You haven't got your support network around you, and you're a young boy, and you're now putting pressure on him by saying that here's your chance, and if you don't take it, I know how the mentality works over there. Keep it quiet. Just
take it slow.
Take the pressure off him. He's got plenty of time. He's a goalkeeper. He's got plenty of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming back to a bit before we break into or conclude, I'm coming back to a bit of really serious topics, maybe because it's ongoing, and if I missed out on it, then it's an opportunity missed. There's a lot of ugly things happening at the moment. Like, not at the moment, it's just that it's seen light at the moment, but it's happening. Like now, the recent one was Minerva, Punjab's match fixing, and everything, allegations and all of that. Then we have three big issues here, and clubbing into one is like I don't know if I'm committing a sin or should I be red carded for that. But there's match fixing and there's age fraud, which is like an ongoing process, and it's huge in India, but nobody wants to address that.
To fix a problem first, you have to admit there's a problem. Exactly.
And maybe this is a minor issue, the last one, but since ISL has again picked up on the refereeing issue, the way the referees are with their decisions.
Okay.
And,
which one do you want me to answer first?
Go with the age fraud, because exactly what I'm saying, nobody wants to talk about it.
Right. Okay. With regards to the age fraud, first of all, if you're doing it, I would put the onus on the player.
I'm sorry for cutting you there, because recently, now even the Bengaluru FC were in question. One of the youth teams was banned. So imagine you don't expect that from a team like Bengaluru FC, who you look up to for professionalism, and there you go. There is something.
Yeah. So we're doing age fraud first. With regards to age fraud, the onus should be on the player and the player's representatives, whether it's his family's manager, whatever the case may be. That's who. If you're lying about your age, you're dumb, and I tell you why you're dumb. Because let's say you're good, let's say you rise through the ranks quicker than anybody else, let's say you go and to a European club, you are going to be tested.
Yep.
And your whole world is going to fall apart when they find out that you're not the age you are, and therefore you're not the value you are. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And not only that, Football is a village, believe me. There's a lot of gossip goes around football, not just Indian football, but European football. Everyone knows your name inside football, even if it never made the light of day in the public.
Right.
So with regards to the Bengaluru thing, I think it's sad that the team is being suspended because you have now denied the opportunity to the other boys who were not committing age fraud. Yeah? So I think that's a little bit sad. Why not ban the players who are committing age fraud? Then it puts an onus on you to make sure that you're telling the truth.
Right.
Yeah? And I would put hefty bans on to make a real example of some players. I'd ban them for 5 years from all professional footballing competition, It should be that serious. And we were talking about the under-20s, England under-20s. Where's Nigeria? How many under-20 World Cups has Nigeria won? And they were going to win the next World Cup, according to all the pundits. Why did they not win the next World Cup? Because it turned out they weren't under-20, or many of them allegedly weren't under-20. So you're just making a mockery of yourself. You're making a fool of yourself, If you want a career in this game, then you need to... No one's going to be perfect, no one's going to be honest. What was the next one?
Yeah, the next one was match fixing. And the recent one coming up with players being approached. And especially when a team is on top of the points table.
I give a round of applause to Minerva and to those players in particular, and I think Minerva have handled it exactly right. They haven't named the players yet, and I wouldn't name the players, and I hope the players aren't named to protect them. But those players, by the way, should be applauded. They really should be applauded, because 30 lakh, that's what I read, I don't know if that's true. 30 lakh is a lot of money to a player. But it's there, you're not going to get rid of it, Now, hopefully with wages rising in Indian football, you're going to see less and less of that. Because 10 years ago, if someone came to you and said, here's 5 lakhs to fix a match, anyone would do it, because the wages were so bad. Quite often they weren't paid on time, the wages, all of that kind of thing. So there was an incentive to do it. Now that wages are rising for Indian players, the money that they're going to have to give as an incentive has to rise, and therefore the match fixing should be less, But what did I just say? First you admit there's a problem. Don't bury your head in the sand. Say it's there, because by the way, it takes place in other parts of the world. It's not just India.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was the final one?
The referee, the issues with the referees?
Referees, they have been totally appalling this season. I totally agree with that. It comes back to where you spend the money. We talked about this right at the beginning. Instead of massive wages to over-the-hill marquee player, why don't you... Now, they were bringing in foreign referees, weren't they? It comes back to match fixing. Me personally, whilst your league is in its infancy, I would want foreign referees that are less likely to be influenced, number one. I'm not saying that any of the referees have been involved in match fixing, but what I'm saying is, you can look at games and you can look at certain decisions that referees have made this season, and you've gone like, either this referee is the worst referee on the planet, which I believe, giving him the benefit of the doubt, or someone has paid him to make that decision. That's how bad it is. But the same principle applies, as I was saying about players. Get them out. Get the referees out. Do you think any of the referees here would give up an opportunity to go for just maybe one season and get trained, coached in a European league, referee some lower division, semi-professional or lower league, referee some games, and then bring them back? Bring them back. Why is it important? Because they're then surrounded by referees who are operating at a different level, higher set of principles. They raise their game, and then they bring that all back. I still believe that. It doesn't matter whether it's administrators, whether it's referees, organisers, or the players themselves. Get them out of the country, and then bring the talent back.
Get the exposure, and then get back to
so the referees
roots.
The referees have been shocking.
Now, we're almost coming to an end to it, and when you're looking at the world football, like in general, whether it's the English or the European, and what is the one thing that's attracting you at the moment, the one thing that's exciting you that's happening around? Like, there are a lot of things happening, like if the Premier League with Man City's unbeaten run, and which came to an end eventually. Or I had just few, put some things like the current transfer gossip that's going on, whether from Sanchez to Arsenal United, or the City going, or Giggs being appointed the Wales manager, or say...
Good for Giggs. With regards to transfer fees and all the rest of it, I mean, people say it's ridiculous money. I don't, and I'll tell you why I don't. What I believe in is the best talent should be paid the best money. What I disagree with is there's players in many leagues around the world who are bang average and they're getting very good salaries. And as far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't even be paid. That's how poor they are. You know, Messi, he should be on $1 billion a week. You know, anyone on the planet would go and see Lionel Messi. Anybody.
Right.
So I understand actually he gets 10% of Barcelona's annual revenue, so maybe he is worth $1 billion. But the fact of the matter is the best players should be given the biggest wages. And it comes back to, you know, why shouldn't a real bang average squad player get £40,000 a week, which is what they're on now.
Yeah.
An average squad player that maybe makes 2 appearances a season, £40,000 a week? Seriously? You know?
Yeah, it's crazy. But I think I like the point that you made, and I think that's a good argument to make, or a base to start off with, saying that, hey, if you're good, why not? You know, why do you have to go in the other side, and why do you have to say, okay, I'm racking your head because somebody is getting paid £147 million and all that? He's good.
Yeah.
He deserves it.
I mean, I think the original part of your question was about, you know, what do you see in the world of football? The biggest thing to really answer the original point of the question was, I think, is what's happening digitally.
Okay.
I think that is the most exciting thing that's going to change football. Now, that's connected to transfer fees. Because if an Amazon or a Facebook or a Google, which is going to happen, by the way, I don't think it'll happen this cycle, but it may happen the next cycle, comes in with a 10 billion, and these are the figures they're talking about, 8 to 10 billion deal for the next cycle of Premier League rights, that is going to blow transfer fees out of the water again.
Yeah.
Because I think the last set of rights in total was approximately 6 billion. So you put another 2 billion, 4 billion onto that, and these guys are going to take over the world, and they've got the cash to do it. You know, the traditional broadcasters are going to struggle.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? It's already been done in the NFL in America. The Thursday night football is now streamed live on Twitter.
Okay. Yeah.
So who says that Amazon, or maybe not Netflix, but Amazon or Facebook says we're going to... I think the only reason it hasn't been done so far is that they are not absolutely sure that technically they can host it. Right? So I think that is really exciting, and I think that they'll start giving football fans more of what they want. For example, take India. There's not many people watching Stoke against Huddersfield.
Right.
But you have to buy a package, don't you?
Yeah.
Now, I think it might fragment. That's what I think. I'm not sure that's necessarily a good thing, but I think it may fragment that you can buy to watch Man United against Arsenal. They have to address it because there's so many people ripping streams now.
Yeah.
If you're a broadcaster and you're not addressing that, you're fools. You're totally not a few fools. I watch a lot of sport, I have to say, like on streams.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's
as do
the
many.
future. Digital is the future, right? Coming back now, final...
Podcasts are the future.
Yes, I hope so. More power to that. Finally, anything that you want to tell us as podcasters, or you know, any advice that you want to give us, or now rather than it's only me sitting here, how much did I score out of 10?
10, 11. The same old things. I would never, coaching I think is different to advice. Mentoring I think is better than advice. I don't really believe in advice because it's just regurgitating something that somebody else believes. But know your shit. Yeah. The way we have a saying, we get told the BBC, know your shit or know your shit, you know. It's the same principle applies. Know your stuff. I'm still shocked because I read a lot of articles on Indian football. I'm not in depth into it, but I keep abreast of it. The analysis of games, it should be splashed everywhere today. The 2-footed challenge last night, it was barely mentioned. Yeah. Barely mentioned. It was that's straight towards the end of the match. I can't remember who did it.
The one that was buzzing with Balwant Singh got the yellow card. Was that the one?
No, not that one. That was where they said it should have been. But that was the elbow.
Yeah, the elbow one.
No, not that. It was the 2-footed challenge later on in the game. And it just not picked up by the media here. So, knowing the game, I hope this wasn't your podcast, by the way, because if it is, this is all over and this is being wiped. There was somewhere I was listening to a discussion, an Indian football discussion, and they were talking about, it was about Gurpreet actually, and about when he's going to collect balls, putting his knee up, If you go and talk to any goalkeeping coach at the highest level, at anywhere in Europe, when you're going to collect the ball in the air, you lead with your knee because it gets rid of everyone in front of you. That's exactly what they're doing. They were saying, like, no, it's dangerous, you shouldn't do that. Yeah? What absolute and utter shit. You know, there are people spouting about the game who don't understand, in this particular case, a technicality of goalkeeping. When you're running to take it, because the striker is going to hurt you.
Yeah.
So you've got to hurt the striker as much as the striker's hurting you. That's what you're going. It's a 50-50 ball. That's what it's all about. It's mine, you know. And I don't care if you get hurt, because if you get hurt, you won't do it again. You won't lead with your elbow or go to, you know, give them a little crack in the ribs. That's what happens on the field of play, you know. So it comes back to knowing your stuff. Don't spout out if you don't understand it. There's areas of the game I don't understand. I'm not a coach, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I can analyse matches because that's what I've done for a lot of my career, but I wouldn't be able to take that analysis and turn it into a... So as far as your podcast is concerned, don't stop. That's all I'll say. We need more football content out in the media, and I think you as a younger generation, because you're way younger than me, Sidhu, you as a younger generation, you've got to carry this forward. Yeah. That's the reason why I agreed to do this. You've got to carry this forward. The older generation don't care about football. They were never brought up on football. They don't give two hoots about football. It requires the energy. Yeah. And you're going to be swimming upstream for a while. Yeah? Yeah. Because people say yes to cricket all the time. You know? Should we do a cricket podcast? The answer is yes straight away. Football podcast? Let me think about it.
I'll get back to you and
I'll get back
happens.
To you. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So you have to keep pushing. The tide will turn. And there's no better time to do that. Why? Because the technology gives you a platform to do it yourself. When I started, you had to go and make a pitch to a broadcaster, and the broadcaster had to accept it, and then you had to get the funding. Now, you can set up on YouTube and do it.
Yeah. The digital, that's what you mentioned, future.
Yeah.
Final bit is message to the Indian football fans or our listeners, or since now you're on the show, there must be many Joe Morrison fans as well listening to it. So anything that you would like to say?
I'm actually quite lucky because I have a great relationship with the Indian football fans, except usually at about 11 or 12 o'clock on a Saturday night or a midweek night when their team is lost, you know, that's when they hate me, but they calm down the next day. Look, you know, we've got to do this together.
Yeah.
I believe so strongly in Indian football, and I hope you do too. And we all have to do our bit. Don't try and change the world. Just try and do your bit. In your particular case, you know, make sure that you're putting out this quality football podcast every week. That's your bit. Your bit is not to go and coach the national team. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So there might be someone young out there who wants to go and be a coach, who wants to go and be a referee. Go and do it. Go and do your bit. You know? We all have to do our bit. It's like going back to the C2K thing in those shows. We realised we didn't have budgets to fly in these huge name guests every single week. So our reasoning was, look, these are really late night matches. Yeah. We don't have the budgets to bring big guests. Therefore, we have to entertain. Why? Because we want young fans to be growing up as football fans, not as cricket fans. If I sit there and just blah, 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 they switch off. And what happens? You've lost a fan to football that can't give anything back in a decade's time or 2 decades' time, you know. So it's a movement.
Right, absolutely.
It's a revolution.
Yeah. Well, in all this talking, and see, I was waffling too much, I guess, because I forgot a fun segment that I planned for. Now, I did a mistake, I must admit to the listeners, that I actually revealed what I was supposed to do. So I'm sure you've already prepared, and you know you've come prepared for it. I don't know about that. So, is there something that one word that comes to your mind when I say the following? So I have a few words.
Just one word?
Yeah.
I can't have two.
Okay, we'll give you that. Okay, let's say two. The first one would be, well, our very own loved man with everyone. I'm sure any team that he plays for, the opponents will never hate him. The captain, Sunil Chhetri.
Oh, by the way, what I was going to say was, is this the first thing that comes into my head for all of these? The first word that comes into my head?
Whatever. When I say the name, what comes to your mind?
Right, so
Sunil Chhetri.
Hedgehog.
Sorry?
Hedgehog.
Okay.
Do you know what a hedgehog is?
I think I do.
It's like a porcupine. It's got spiky.
Yes.
I'll tell you a quick story about it. So one of the first times he came on our show, you'll hate me for telling you this. One of the first times he came on our show, we have makeup girls, obviously, and they do everything from makeup and check your clothes, etc. But they didn't have any hair gel, and Sunil had come straight from his hotel and didn't have any hair gel, and he was just absolutely distraught that he was going to be going on air with flat hair. I mean, he's got it pretty close shaved at the moment. I don't know whether that's a marriage thing or something, but no. Every time I've worked with him, he's had this like spiky. That's all I can think of is like Sonic the Hedgehog, the game. Yeah. So that's what I call him, is Hedgehog. No, he's a legend. But the first word that came to mind was Hedgehog.
Okay, Gurpreet Singh Sandhu.
Weird.
Does that have a story to that?
Weird fashion sense, weird jokes. Well, he thinks they're jokes. He thinks he's funny. He's just not funny at all. Weird taste in many things. Weird, but he's a goalkeeper. They're all weird. I've never met a goalkeeper who was not weird.
Yeah. Okay then.
Weird.
Okay.
Gurpreet Singh Sandhu. Weird.
Indian football.
Indian football exploding.
Okay.
In a good way.
Okay. Finally, Joe Morrison.
Strange.
Was that an awkward silence to think of a word?
No, I'd never have to think of myself. One word. I have to keep it to one word. The word I'd probably want to say about myself is alive.
And I think you're pretty much that. I mean, if this was actually, people could sense our energy here. I mean, like I said, I started the show saying that I've got many people saying that I have a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. But since I already apologized about today's show especially, but I think two people having a lot of energy is what...
I love people who've got a lust for life and a passion for something. I don't care what you do in your life. If you've got a passion to be the best at whatever you do, that's if there was anything I could leave all the listeners with, it's go be the best you can be.
Yeah, absolutely, and be alive to do all of that. Now that brings us to the end of a wonderful show. I can't say one thank you or twice, or I can say multiple times of thank yous, and that wouldn't be enough. Thank you so much, Joe Morrison,
Pleasure.
for coming on to our show, and this just is probably the icing on the cake that we wanted in 2018. And if I'm not wrong, it's the 260th episode of us.
Is it?
So
okay.
I think it's wonderful to have
260. Is that not the same number of goals that Alan Shearer scored? There you go. I think that's in the Premier League goals.
I think that's what probably got us together. And you being the Newcastle United fans, all worked there. Well, thanks to all the listeners who are watching, not watching. You can't. You are listening to us, and there you go, rambling, mumbling. That's what's happening to me right now. Please do like, share, and subscribe. And now, since we had this gentleman here, I think we deserve a bit of subscription. And if I may ask you to say that, like if you think we are
subscribe. The Fan Garage. What else do you have to do?
Get onto the
website.
Follow TFG Football Twitter handle.
Follow the Twitter handle, the Fan Garage. There's so many platforms now, isn't there? Probably left one out.
Actually. Let us know your thoughts about this show, and if you enjoyed it, let us know that as well, and let him know personally as well. I'm on Twitter, Matthew94. Joe Morrison is at Joe Footy, and we are signing off from this hotel that he actually called a colonial look to it.
It is got a colonial. The Hilton in Bombay. Beautiful.
Yeah, we are signing off from here. Thank you so much, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.
He bends down to test the warm water for his bath. He comes here to quench his thirst for a hot shower and some podcasts. You can witness how he enjoys having other people talk about cool stuff in his bathroom. Indeed, it helps him with his loneliness. You can find more of his pieces on ivmpodcast.com, your one-stop destination where you can check out the coolest Indian podcasts. Happy listening.